Welcome to listening. Select missing words. Practice at number one. As we just saw in the introduction, in this type of question, you'll hear an audio. The last word or the last few words of the audio, they have been beeped out. So what you have to do is you'll be given a choice of words. Uh, four or five choices, and out of that, you'll have to pick the words which can fit in the end of that sentence. All right. So essentially, you have to select those missing words. Now, you'll also be able to see in the question directions a hint on what the audio is about. So that's why reading the instructions in this type of question is important. So in most of the other questions, pretty much in everything else, the instructions they're not that important. So if you have been practicing, by the time you get to the exam, you already know what the instructions are and what you're expected to do. But in this question, the instructions are important because the instructions tell you what the audio will be about. And then you'll have 7 seconds. So in 7 seconds, just read the instructions and read the choices, and then be ready to hear the audio. All right, let's start with the practice. Question number one. Here we go.
Bullying is not like other forms of aggression. It involves a particular kind of harm, and it's aimed at creating a kind of helplessness, an inability to act and stand up for yourself. Being bullied can have far-reaching effects on your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your performance in school, even your interactions with others. And all of us experience it at one time or another. But when you're young and in the middle of it, it can seem like
All right, so I'll give you a few seconds to decide on your answer choice. All right, so let's have a look at the correct answer. Here it is. Second, an unending nightmare. So if you remember, or if you are taking notes of the audio, the last few words they're very important. So in this case, the last couple of words were, it can seem like. Okay, so it can seem like. So you're essentially comparing what they described before that with something else. All right. So it can seem like the first two, those are the things that you can compare something with. The second two, they are, the things which are or which can be. So if it was, it can be, then, it can be character building or it can be troublesome. All right, but when you're comparing, then it has to be a thing. So that's why it would either be a unwanted adventure or an unending nightmare. But it's an because it's followed by a word beginning in a vowel u. So an unending nightmare. And also the text, it tells you which one will make logical sense. So even if it was an unwanted adventure, you wouldn't still call it an adventure. What they describe here is quite terrible. It's like a nightmare, a scary dream. Let's look at the transcript. Here it is. So let's start by talking about bullying and what it involves. So it's kind of a harm, and that bullying it can have far-reaching effects on self-confidence, etc. Then in the end it says, but when you're young and in the middle of it, it means bullying. When you are in the middle of bullying, it can seem like an unending nightmare, like a bad dream that's not ending. So that was your correct answer. All right. So if you need to pause, just pause the video and make sure you understand everything. And after that, you can go to question number two. Here it is, question number two.
You know, everybody wants to be happy. So why isn't everybody happy? The obvious answer is it's not easy. And one of the single biggest obstacles to being happy is that people naturally compare themselves to other people and assume nearly all of them are happier than they are. This is a big problem. So, how would you like an equation to determine the exact amount of unhappiness in your life? Well, I am here to tell you that I have developed an equation. It is U equals I minus R. U is unhappiness, I is image, and R is reality. The difference between the images you have had for your life and the reality of your life is the amount of unhappiness in your life, which gives you an idea of how powerful images are.
All right. Again, I'll give you a few seconds to decide on your answer choice. All right. The correct answer choice is the second one, are in hurting us. Let's have a look at the transcript. But before that, do you remember what the last words were? So the last few words were uh, gives you an idea of how powerful image is. How powerful image is. Now he's trying to tell that how powerful images are in doing something. So following that, it would become clear that the second option is the correct option. That images are in hurting us. Here's the transcript, and it says that difference between the images you have had for your life and the reality of your life is the amount of happiness. Okay, so unhappiness is caused by the difference between the images that you had and what the reality is. And from there, he says, which gives you an idea of how powerful images are in hurting us. Okay, so nothing else, third, fourth, don't make any sense. How powerful images had manipulated us. All right, but there's no, discussion of manipulation, etc., something like that. But unhappiness can be directly related to hurt. So that's why we go with option number two. Okay, so once you're ready, you can go to question number three. Here we are, question number three.
I'm speaking words right now, and if you know English, you can understand what I'm saying. But how? Well, sometimes in order to find out how a healthy brain works, we need to study a damaged brain. Aphasia is a communication disorder that results from damage to the parts of the brain involved in language. And in the late 19th century, patients with aphasia allowed scientists to better study how our brain processes and produces words and sentences. Through their studies, they found two main regions in the left hemisphere that were associated with language. Broca's area, which is located in the left frontal lobe, is linked to speech production. Patients who have lesions in this area may understand what I'm saying right now fairly well, but would have a hard time forming sentences of their own. On the other hand, Wernicke's area, located in the temporal lobe, is thought to be important in speech comprehension. If someone has damage in this area, they can produce language just fine, but it would be a meaningless mismatch of words like red bottle brushes hairy sky. But this is just a classical model of language, so there is bound to be a few flaws. Recent studies using imaging techniques have shown that the regions around these two areas are also active during language processing. And even more, the right frontal lobe may be involved in comprehending the semantics.
All right, so I'll give you a few seconds to decide on your response, your answer. All right, the correct answer is the option number three, understanding sentences. All right, now before we have a look at the transcript, do you remember the last few words of what you heard? So the last few words were something maybe involved in comprehending sentences or sorry, in comprehending semantics or yeah. So those were the last few words, and when you just try to connect those words, and also in the passage it tells you that this is about language disorder. So that means before the audio starts, that you're going to hear about language and some medical issue related to that, and that's what they talk about. And in the end, they say even more, the right frontal lobe may be involved in comprehending semantics or what could be the other option? So comprehending semantics or creating sentences or battling aphasia or understanding sentences or correcting grammar. Now they say in the earlier part that the patient can still create sentences, but they won't have any meaning, right? So and they say in the end that these two areas are active during language processing. So language processing means helping you process what you are hearing, making sense of it. So that's where understanding comes in. So and it goes with comprehending semantics or understanding sentences. So that's why we go with that. All right. The passage doesn't talk about how you would correct grammar specifically. All right, or that particular lobe, it is involved in battling aphasia, the disease, the condition, right? So it just says in this or that. So then both of those things, they have to be similar. And what's similar to comprehending semantics? It's understanding sentences. All right, so that was the correct option. Please pause, make sure that you understand it correctly. All right. Okay, so well done. With that, you have completed set number one. So these sets, they were quite small. Hopefully, you only need a short break, and after that, come back and start practicing with practice set number two. All right, all the best.